When you have the top this deeply involved in the drug smuggling and providing airplanes for the drug smugglers, when you have our big bankers laundering the money and bringing it back into the system, if they were really interested in purging our society from drugs, you could do it pretty quickly if you went after the bankers.
You already know what it is. It's your boy Laid Back with another reaction, another review, another episode. Hey, TikTok, you up to bat. Bow. It's your boy Laid Back. Welcome back to my channel. Hey, two things we got to do. You got to hit that subscribe button. I'm drinking this water. You already know what it is, man. Think rich in 2026. Think rich in 2026. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the notification bell. Stay up to date with all the videos. We back with another one. Don't forget, hit that like button. Also, too, man, make sure y'all tap into my TikTok, man. Link will be in the pinned comment. Super fire, live trasher pass, dope live streams. Make sure y'all pull up over there. We building something special over there. But we back with another one, man. We got some government cover-up on this one. You make it to the end of this one, you a real one for real. Make sure you put that in the comments, man. Don't forget. Also, I got a TikTok playlist. If you into this stuff, you can binge watch, but proceed with caution because it's some but let's go ahead and get into it. Fire Squad, what's popping? Let's get it.
Almost like a vlog style. Before anybody was doing vlogs, Alex Jones was doing vlogs.
So I don't know much about it when I sneak in. It's like, okay, you're going to pay me to sneak in and get guys worshiping an owl. Sure. Okay, I'll sneak into your camp. I mean, I wanted a free trip to Northern California. Okay, so again, I'm a Christian, but I'm like, okay, devils and devil worship, that's what people do in on acid and trailer parks. Okay, the world of the leader not worshiping an owl. Okay? Yeah. And so it comes time, I fly out there, and little, DV cams just come out, this little compact camera, put it in the fanny pack, and basically it was all true. It happened. It was insane. So it's on the Russian River, totally beautiful. It's the biggest stand of redwood trees outside of the big national park in California. So they pull up to the entrance, and there's like a bog and a little bit of a swamp right here off the road, and they go, okay, Alex, you're going to walk through. And I had a feeling, and I saw that they were pulling cars into park in a parking lot over here and picking them up on these big flatback buses. And I made a split-second decision to step off and go through the barbed wire fence, because this is before the checkpoint, and just act like I was in the parking lot and get on one of those. And so we just sailed through, because Mike Hansen, my producer, also went in with me, because it would be better to have two people who aren't usually alone. And so they've told me some of the passcodes to different camps. It's like little camps and cabins and stuff, and like bars and things there that are built all over. There's over 100 camps.
Do you remember what the passcode was?
It was stuff like, I'm with the Hillbillies, Red Mountain. That was, I'm with the Hillbillies.
Hey, I'm Alex Jones. I'm here with the Hillbillies. All right.
Well, I chose that because that's the Bush's camp. It's like a Texas camp that's kind of midway up. So we get off, and I'm like, okay, I got a map here. I want to go see the owl. I'm going to make sure this is real, because the pond's supposedly only like a half mile down. So I'm going in the gorge, and people are walking by, and I'm like, that's a senator. I know who's that. You recognize people because you've seen them, but you're trying to think, who is that? They're basically all famous. All of a sudden, I'm walking by this big pond. Like, there's the big 45-foot owl. Oh, my gosh. And they already had it, like, getting it ready over by the side, like this banner, like a mummy, but like a child. The mock sacrifice they burned. So I saw that. I'm like, okay. It starts getting dark, and I go, okay, let me reload the camera, get ready. I've got a little hole in it here with a hole in the front I can lift up. This is makeshift where I can hit the button on the back. And there they're playing. Dun, 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 dun. And there's an orchestra playing, and they're all eating, and there's these giant tables, and I can just smell the food. And that's looking good. I'm like 100 yards above it, looking at it like a cat. But now it's getting dark, so I feel safe, and everybody's drunk by then. Now everybody's going down to the water. So you go around the owl on this bank to then see the owl about 60, 70 yards away. And this high priest comes out in his white robes and red cape, and he's got the staff, and he says, let the dead who were here before us, their spirits be here. And so they did, and they go through like this cornucopia of like Babylon gods, and they summon all these different gods, and they say, but we summon the most powerful, the goddess, to renew us the next year and give us strength and rebuild our bodies and give us the thing we need. And we bring an offering forward to our God so that we will be able to put all of our sin and trouble onto it. And then this open, ornate, I'd say like 18th century British carriage comes out with big glass sides with a coffin on it, like a 5-year-old size coffin, like a 5-year-old child would be in, and a bunch of priests, like with a whole bunch of guys with torches. I got all this on video. Come out, guys with torches in front of it was like 4 people bearing the coffin. They take the effigy of the child out and put it in front of it. And so it's like, be gone, Duncan! And it's like, we forward to feed you. No! Please don't kill me, no, please. Like, yes, we're gonna kill you. And I'm sitting there going, like it's a play. They're not like this serious. And these old men are sitting there just going, but like in a satanic type deal. They were just going, and I'm like, hey, this is pretty cool.
Oh my
And
God.
I'm just like, and Mike was kind of, hey, how's it going? They're like, this is important.
Oh my
It's
God.
like, and so you're like, they're dead serious.
Do your own research, man.
I actually met someone who worked at the CIA, and I asked him the question. I said, yo, it wasn't me, it was a friend of mine asked it while we were there. He said, how many conspiracy theories are true? And the guy laughed and he said, obviously I can't say anything to you, but he said, but I will tell you this. Oftentimes at the agency, we would be grateful. This was a really interesting phrase. He said, we would be grateful at how crazy conspiracy theorists were because half the time they were correct, but half the time their conspiracies were so crazy that we never needed to like step in and
balance.
And it was this interesting concept to me where I went like, whoa. Wait, so half the things you think
Are crazy.
whatever you are, whoever you are in your world, half the things that you think are crazy are probably true.
Yes.
And then half the things that you think are true are probably crazy. The difficulty is we'll just never know.
That's a great point.
The biggest cover-up, frankly, is in the big breakthroughs in transdimensional physics and the science of consciousness. That's the biggest one, bigger than the free energy, bigger than the anti-gravity. Many of these civilizations are specifically interested in the conscious universe so that we can understand their way of living, their travel, their communication, their paradigm. And that's why the big science is the science of consciousness. The next 1,000 years is going to be all about the development of higher states of consciousness, but also the applications of consciousness in science and communication and healing. I call this the lost century.
Wow.
There's a century of evolution on this planet that has been sidelined into the gutter of endless war and ignorance and cover-ups. Our spirituality and social development has lagged way below our technological ability.
Our spirituality and social development has lacked. That was heavy.
To destroy the planet and be a threat to other worlds. And these civilizations know that. So that's sort of the big picture.
That was heavy. That was heavy.
When you have the top this deeply involved in the drug smuggling and providing airplanes for the drug smugglers, when you have our big bankers laundering the money and bringing it back into the system, if they were really interested in purging our society from drugs, you could do it pretty quickly if you went after the bankers so they couldn't profit from it anymore, and then you impeached Bush and J.L. Lehman and a bunch of other people at that level, and just the information that they have and started locking people up at that level, then start down and you could dry this thing up. Then God knows at some point, but they're not going to do that. That's the big bucks, that's the big money. They don't like civil liberties. Give them more control over the people. Now, you have that kind of money and tolerance of the thing at the top. The White House involved, Oliver North getting memos back and forth with Robert Owens saying these people were working or smuggling drugs, knowing about it, giving protection, Ed Meese giving protection, fending off investigations. Wow. George Bush, through Greg Rodriguez and the others, actually running, flying the drugs. Now, this makes an utter mockery of their claim of a war against drugs. So then you come back and look at the drug testing. Clearly, they're not interested in cleaning drugs out of the society. So why are they trying to get into the testing? And that's where you become very suspicious, because that's a tremendously effective tool for population control.
As a means of social control, that also is another reason why drugs are tolerated in the U.S. and other capitalist countries, because it is a form of social control. People are stoned out on drugs, addicted to drugs, obsessed with drugs.
Drunk.
They're going to not be social rebels.
Exactly. Between commercial television and lots of crack, you can take a lot of the guts out of the society without question.
Television and crack.
Has there ever been anyone sent to jail because they've spoken about this subject matter?
Worse. And that story has yet to be told.
Ooh.
Yes, there are people who have had faced extreme disciplinary actions, and potentially worse.
The death penalty?
I'm not going to elaborate right now because there's some things happening to try to. This is why Congress is working hard for whistleblower protections because we want people to feel safe to come out and have a conversation. And right now they don't feel overly safe. They've seen some of the tactics and techniques that were applied to try to keep people quiet in the past. Try going to Area 51 and look at the signs on that chain link fence where it says lethal force authorized. You cross that fence and they can kill you dead. Okay? So the government can, under certain extreme cases, under certain extreme situations and conditions, they can do whatever they need to do to protect national security, and they will.
The real men in black, they work for the Air Force Special Operations Group out of Fort Belvoir, and they are the real men in black. These are special intelligence officers, specially trained. In fact, there's a special unit within the Air Force Intelligence Service. It's called Section K, and these men and women are sheep-dipped. And sheep-dipped means that they're military, they discharge them from the military, they make them civilians, and they bring them right back into their same job. The reason they do this is because they don't have to follow the military protocols, the dress and grooming standards, and they can operate freely, more freely, outside the military channels.
Tell us a little about their history and how they first appeared.
Back in the 1950s, when the Project Blue Book was occurring, there was investigations going on both overtly and covertly within the intelligence service. Most of the overt investigations were done by Air Force intelligence officers, one of them being my uncle, Edward Doty. And they would go out and ask questions, collecting overt information about UFO sightings. And then there was a secretive part of the Air Force Intelligence Service. The Air Force Intelligence Service had field operating units, and they started in the 50s, and they're even more prevalent even today.
What was their main agenda, and who did they actually, work for, or was it multiple three-letter agencies?
Their mission was to go out and collect the secret stuff, the secret information about UFO sightings or a UFO incident that occurred, to collect photographs or debris, or get statements from people, examine the area where a UFO was sighted or landed, collecting evidence that's on the ground. And this was all covertly. So in order to covertly collect, they had to have disguises. And these guys were experts in disguises. Some of them were acting as plumbers, air conditioning repair people, telephone repair people outside a normal chain. They could easily talk to people. For instance, one incident that happened in Watertown, New York. These MIBs came out as electricians because of an incident that happened west of the community of Watertown, New York, in upstate New York. And this was in the 60s. The Project Blue Book investigators had already been there and collected information. But the two people that actually saw this UFO and took pictures, they wouldn't share anything with the Air Force investigators. So the Air Force sent in these two men who were posing as electricians, but they were the men in black. And although they weren't dressed in black, they were acting as this covert operating team. And they were able to talk to these people in a normal, everyday contact and ask them, hey, did you see something last week? Was there some kind of a UFO incident? Well, these people opened up to these two, and they obtained the photographs that the Air Force wanted.
At what point in a mission do they actually show up?
They come later. They come after the initial investigative team arrives. Either Project Blue Book investigators, or after that, the investigators that arrived on scene to collect the evidence or interview the witnesses to this. And then, depending on what information that the initial investigative team obtains, then the MIBs come in. Now, the story is that the MIBs are always there at every scene or every incident, and that's not true. These guys come in on legitimate sightings. They come in and get the real important stuff that the initial investigative team didn't get.
So what are their missions tasks for, other than that? Are they debriefed before, of course, they go out to these investigations?
Yes. They somehow know of the incident, and that's sometimes questionable how they know. And then they have a specific mission of what they need to collect. If they can't get the information overtly, they'll get it covertly. And believe me, if they want the information, they're going to get it. By hook or by crook, they're going to get the information. And they'll use any means necessary, including surreptitious entries into the residence to steal those photographs or the information that's needed.
And that's the government. That's the government.
What I saw was something the size of like an Imperial Star Destroyer.
In on it. I'm zooming, Mom.
Moving over Phoenix.
Did you really?
Yeah.
You were there?
Yeah.
On March 13th of 1997, over 10,000 people would watch as something massive flew over the city of Phoenix, Arizona.
They're just cops. Cops don't walk around in the middle of the night with telescopes.
The 911 system was completely overwhelmed.
What do you think that was?
I don't know. That was the Air Force, Dad.
Well, I hope it was our Air Force.
And even jets would be scrambled to investigate. Most people would capture the same thing, a series of lights just flying above the city. However, at the same time that this was happening, 4 campers were out in the desert surrounding Phoenix. What they would capture would shock even the military.
Are you catching this stuff? Whoa. Yeah, I got both of them.
The only thing that would be found of these 4 campers was a video camera that they were using to document their trip.
What? They never found them?
What is that? What's going on? What the hell is going on?
No way. This is real?
Hey, man. Maybe we should just barricade ourselves in the back or some shit.
This ain't real. Was that real? Let me know in the comments, bro.
If you were tasked with making the world believe that Jeffrey Epstein was dead and getting him out of that prison, how would you do it?
Oh, you would take out the body, whether it's a body double or, you know, made out of silicone or whatever, take it out in full view of everybody. That's how I would do it. Let as many people as possible see this body so that reasonable people can agree to disagree.
They did do that.
The conversation about the ear, which I've heard 1,000 million times. If I wanted to initiate a cover-up of this scale, I would cremate whatever it is I took out on that gurney. Because otherwise you'd be having people say, let's just settle this. We're going to dig him up. We're going to get a court order. We're going to exhume the body. We're going to do DNA testing and make sure that this is Jeffrey Epstein. Can't do that. Cremated.
Didn't the Smithsonian cover up Adam and Eve or something?
Are you talking about the Adam and Eve book?
Yes.
Oh, that's a different one. That's so that's a book. It was released in 1966 by Dr. Chan Thomas, and it's called The Story of Adam and Eve. And that story title sounds cute until you read it and you realize he's talking about really Adam and Eve. And the story is it's this 278-page manuscript that is classified by the CIA, and they've removed 200 pages. There's only like 50 or 60 pages left, and half of those are blank. And the CIA says it's been sanitized. And the reason that the CIA was so interested in the book of Adam and Eve is because it describes the end of the world. Oh, shit. And Dr. Thomas in the book talks about pole shifts and what happens when the poles shift. Something happens to the inner core of the Earth, our electrical field gets thrown off, and when that happens, the poles shift, and it's something that happens over and over and over again. And his pole shift is a 90-degree shift, so Antarctica goes to the equator, and the equator goes down south. Like it's violent. And as it's shifting, the atmosphere continues to rotate, west to east. So that he describes in the book just walls of water and this wind and debris just tearing across everything. Cities are reduced to waste. He says New York, Boston, Chicago, LA are nothing but memories. New York is at the bottom of the sea. And Antarctica is at the equator and becomes, like a tropical land. And the story is the CIA wanted this suppressed because it would cause chaos and all that.
I don't know, man.
It's one of the darkest chapters in United States medical history, a cruel experiment that lasted 40 years, also known as the Tuskegee Syphilis Study. Beginning in 1932, government researchers from the Public Health Service and the CDC recruited 600 poor black men from Macon County, Alabama, 399 who had syphilis and 201 who didn't, telling them they were being treated for bad blood, a catch-all term locals used for various illnesses. In truth, the men were part of a secret study on how untreated syphilis progresses in the body. Even after penicillin became a standard cure in 1947, the researchers deliberately withheld treatment and lied to the men, never telling them they had syphilis. They were given placebos, spinal taps disguised as therapy, and vague assurances of care, all while the disease ravaged their bodies. Over the decades, at least 28 men died directly from syphilis, more than 100 from related complications. 40 of their wives were infected, and 19 children were born with congenital syphilis. Researchers blocked draft boards from treating infected men during World War II and even discouraged local doctors from prescribing penicillin. The study was finally exposed in 1972 by whistleblower Peter Buxton, sparking public outrage and congressional hearings. A class action lawsuit in 1973 resulted in a $10 million settlement, and in 1997, President Bill Clinton publicly apologized, calling the experiment shameful and racist. The men had never consented to being studied and were used without regard for their safety, rights, or dignity. Though some received minor medical care and burial expenses as incentives, they were deceived and manipulated throughout. The experiment's fallout led to major reforms in research ethics, including the establishment of institutional review boards and informed consent requirements.
Bro, that's crazy. Crazy.
And then George W. Bush gets elected president. And 9/11 happens. And as soon as 9/11 happens, Bush says, we got to invade Iraq. It's their fault. 9/11's their fault. We're like, no, they had like literally nothing to do with 9/11. Well, we're going to invade them anyway. Okay, well, we think this is a mistake, but battle lines drawn, as I said earlier.
Was there no conversations, like real conversations with?
The only conversations were between Cheney, Condi Rice, and Rumsfeld. But mostly Cheney's deputies, Scooter Libby and Addington and, all those guys. Zal Khalilzad.
No one in the CIA could get in Bush's ear and be like, look.
We were absolutely preoccupied with Al-Qaeda.
Got it. Okay.
Everybody in the building's working on Al-Qaeda.
Okay.
And then Bush calls one day and says, oh, by the way, come up with an invasion plan because we're going to invade Iraq and overthrow Saddam Hussein. We're like, what? What are you talking about? But that was it. That was the order. So we decide to invade Iraq, and the CIA says, let's say we do invade Iraq and we overthrow Saddam Hussein. Then what? And Dick Cheney says, we're going to put this fella, Ahmed Chalabi, he's going to be the president. And we said, whoa, no, we are not.
Cheney said that.
Yeah, we have a burn notice on Cheney. I mean on Chalabi, and on everybody associated with Chalabi. We're not working with Chalabi. And then the CIA reissued the burn notice saying, listen, this is from 10 years ago, but just remember, we don't deal with this guy. So what Cheney did is he ordered the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence to secretly reopen a channel with Chalabi. And he specifically told him, don't tell the CIA.
Wow.
I remember, part of my job, or 90% of my job at the time, was reading 10, 15,000 cables a day, 20,000 that were coming in to brief the director. I'd boil the 10 or 20,000 cables down to a half a dozen of the most important issues to brief the director in the morning. And then we started getting these cables. Like, the weapons of mass destruction are located at these geo-coordinates. I'm like, holy shit, who found this? Super secret, double secret probation kind of special source that nobody can know about.
Bruh, what the hell?
Why would they want to fake UFOs? This is so weird.
Did you happen to watch
Joe Rogan episode 1945 where I talked about the whole history of the golden age of general relativity and its relationship to UFO, UAP, anti-gravity research, and the atomic bomb?
I didn't know.
Okay. When we invaded the beaches of Normandy on D-Day, that was called Operation Overlord. We had an entirely fake invasion planned of Norway called Operation Fortitude that was part of Operation Bodyguard, which is part of just total deception. And why? Because we were building up troops to do something huge. So we tried to convince, we planted plans for the invasion of Norway on dead bodies to wash up on beaches so the Germans would find them. We fake stuff all the time. That's what we do. And you can't talk about what we do that is deceptive without being ruined by what are called covert influence operations. Like if you watch my Twitter account, you'll see all sorts of accounts descend on it. Fraud, charlatan, grifter, blah, 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 blah. Some of that is just people being mean. But you'll notice that, like, if I really start talking about physics and I start talking about security and I start talking about things that anyone can Google and most of us don't think to do it, suddenly it gets really, really intense. And the whole point is it's supposed to be untraceable. It's supposed to be a way in which, like almost certainly, we know a ton about what happened in the Wuhan Institute of Virology because of 2 bioweapons conventions that we were signatories to and which we ratified. The Geneva Convention and a bioweapons convention in the 1970s. But that's not top of mind for ordinary people. They just watched, their great-grandma die, and they watched their children get sick, and they watched their own brain fog. They can't know whether that was a bioweapon that we were working on coming out of the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill with Ralph Barrick's lab. We're up to constant secret stuff.
Why would they fake the UFOs though? What was that a distraction?
You ever seen the B-2 bomber?
Yeah.
What if you saw that before we were ready to say it existed?
Yeah, you'd think it was a UFO or something.
So wouldn't it be better if we had a UFO story ready to go when we had cool aerospace?
Oh, okay. So you're saying they're working on something which they didn't want you to know. So
What's more, what if we convinced China or Russia or Iran that we had incredible powers that they don't have? Then they might be very reluctant to strike us. Or they might waste a tremendous amount of money developing anti-gravity technology when there's no such thing.
This is interesting.
And I don't mean to jump to a totally different topic. We can talk about Julian Assange later, but on the Julian Assange case, do you remember at the tail end of the Trump administration, when WikiLeaks released the Vault 7 documents, and Mike Pompeo said that WikiLeaks was a hostile, non-state intelligence actor? Those were very carefully chosen words, because anytime there's a covert action program being considered, like murdering Julian Assange, you have to brief the congressional oversight committees. If it's a counterintelligence operation, you don't have to brief the committees. Why? Because if it's counterintelligence, maybe it's the committee members that are the spies, that are the moles, that are working for the Chinese or the Russians or the Iranians or the Cubans. And so you don't tell anybody. So just by calling WikiLeaks a hostile, non-state intelligence actor, the assumption is maybe Senator so-and-so supports WikiLeaks. That would make him an enemy. So you don't have to brief it. And then you can go do your hit and murder Julian Assange and deny it in the media. And if a member of the oversight committees is interviewed by the New York Times or by CNN, he can say, I don't think it was the CIA because they would have briefed us on something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that was basically proven that I remember there was an article about this on Yahoo.
Yahoo News.
Yahoo News of all places. I had another CIA officer in here, and I asked him about that, and he said this is bullshit. I think he didn't say it was bullshit, but he said he discredited it because it was from Yahoo News.
Bull, because the author was a 2-time Pulitzer Prize winning.
Oh wow.
Oh yeah, investigative
You
journalist.
gotta find that Yahoo News article.
Formerly with the New York Times, and they say in the article that they interviewed 36 current and former intelligence officers.
Current and former.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. How many current CIA officers do you have? Are you in touch with? Are you allowed to say?
Sure. Current, I'm going to say 2.
2.
Yeah. Former, wow.
Is there such thing as? I mean, your case is different, but once you leave the CIA, aren't you always in the CIA?
No. Once you leave the CIA, you're in the CIA for another year. So what happens is you submit your resignation. Your resignation is never accepted. They process you in a leave without pay status, so that if there is an operation that you are uniquely qualified for, or if there's an asset that you recruited that will only talk to you, that gives them the right to call you back in that year, and you have to do the operation. If there is no callback in the year, then they accept your resignation and they implement it.
Wow. Wow, that's interesting. Wow.
Back in 1943, during World War II, the government was experimenting with technology to make battleships like this invisible. One of the weirdest projects was called the Philadelphia Experiment, which involved this ship called the USS Outrage, which was a destroyer escort ship. And the goal was to make this ship invisible by manipulating the gravitational and electric magnetic fields to create the invisibility cloak on the ship. They bring the ship out and the crew starts the experiment. Right as they were doing it, the ship has a green cloak around it and then disappears. The ship reappears 200 miles away. So it actually was successful, and the ship did disappear or turn invisible or teleport, and then it returned back to the harbor. When the crew returned with the ship, that's when it got really weird, because there was accounts of a lot of the crew being sick, nauseous, dead, missing body parts, driven crazy, and just not well. And the craziest one, some were melded into the ship and actually fused inside the ship. Now this is a pretty controversial story. A lot of people don't believe it. A lot of people think that it was actually a gas leak and the crew was hallucinating. How did all the crew have the same hallucination? There is evidence of documents being missing, government making efforts to bury this experiment and not talk about it. There's a lot of accounts from Navy families and witnesses saying that they knew people or were a part of it, and that they saw the green flare and the crew being messed up. I was looking into like what happened to the ship after. It was transferred to Greece and then destroyed and eventually sold for scraps. Do you think this actually happened, or is this a conspiracy?
That sounds crazy. Real crazy.
You're saying that Pam Bondi said on camera, we have a client list.
On the White House lawn.
I've seen the client list.
Yes.
And then yesterday, she's saying there's no client list.
There's no client list. And there was no systematic blackmail. That actually might be the most preposterous line in the document.
The whole thing that this tape shows that he didn't kill himself is like a joke. But worse than that, it's a joke that we all get. Like, they're not fooling anybody. So I feel like we're at a dangerous point now.
Yeah, I agree, because the lie is more the lie at this point is not even part of trying to convince any of this is true.
Yes.
The lie is a signal to everybody else involved in the scheme that to the ultimate ends, the United States government will go to protect all of you.
Yes.
And that's the
Man, is that smart.
Purpose.
Can you say that again? Okay,
yes.
So it's a signal.
The lie is not for you and me. The lie is for those implicated to say, no matter what, we will protect you. And then we have to start asking the question, why? As in, what is the purpose?
What is the purpose?
In September of 1950, the U.S. Navy secretly sprayed the San Francisco Bay with bacteria just to see what would happen.
What?
Operation Sea Spray. The Navy released these 2 types of bacteria from a ship, sprayed into the San Francisco Bay, believing them to be harmless to humans. They wanted to determine how vulnerable the city was to a biological attack. I'm not going to attempt to say these 2 types of bacteria, but the second one is in the lineage of a type of bacteria that was created at Camp Diedrich, also in the 50s. And based on the results from 43 testing locations, nearly all of San Francisco's 800,000 residents at the time would have been dosed with this bacteria. Directly following this operation, there was a rise in very serious urinary tract infections and a rise in pneumonia cases, although they could not directly correlate the illnesses with the operation. There's also no evidence that the Navy alerted health officials before blanketing the area with bacteria. But wait, there's more. Also in the 50s, the Army dispersed zinc cadmium sulfide. They released it from airplanes into the atmosphere over Minnesota and other Midwestern states. We now know that zinc cadmium sulfide is cancer-causing, and particles of this were detected 1,000 miles away. In 1966, in New York City, the military dropped light bulbs full of this bacteria into the subways. You know, just to see how bacteria would spread, because the only way to combat bio attacks is to do it on your own people first. And there are many, many more cases like this that are super interesting.
Bro, the government, bro.
You have to really look at it this way. Rats, informants are useful. They're not truthful. So when you have people that have the ability to run away from their own crimes and their sentencing, and the government uses them, whether they're telling the truth or not, to put out their narrative, to put other people away, that seems very unjust to me, right? So we have this justice system that everyone thinks is fair, but you can be, you know, and part of what they did with my grandfather, they gave him 3 life sentences, was because they said they don't want young people to be like him. What do we want to show? We want to show people that you could kill people, commit the worst crimes, but as long as you rat or let the government use your name as an informant, you could go free. That's what we want to create in this world? Or do we want more honest people? Do we want to encourage people to say, okay, these crimes don't pay, but ratting and telling on people, or not even, some of these people are used, the government uses their name and they didn't even tell that story. And that's part of the whole hatred for them, because a lot of the rats that were my grandfather's case were not telling the truth. And years later, it came out that they weren't telling the truth. And other rats told on them and they didn't use them because that would go against what the initial rat said. So it's a very tricky space, and I don't respect rats.
Pat Tillman left the NFL to join the Army. His death is very suspicious as well. Not the fact we know that he was killed by friendly fire, but the way they handled his body afterwards, his uniform, confiscating his last journal, using his death to prop up the war propaganda.
I didn't even know that about Tillman's journal. So that was confiscated by the...
His uniform was burned and his journal was confiscated. Left a multi-million-dollar contract to go fight Taliban. Gets over there and is like, what the fuck am I doing? I'm guarding these poppy fields. It's not what I signed up for. I miss my wife. And then some really negligent maneuvers happened and split up his unit, and he ended up being with one of the members of the Afghani army who was their kind of guide. Saw the guy in some dim lighting on the ridge. It was with Pat. They fired on him. Obviously Pat, the Afghani, thought that they were getting fired on by Taliban, so fired back, and ended up Pat got killed. His brother was not told right away that it was friendly fire. I mean, it's one of the only books I've ever cried reading.
That's crazy, bro. That is crazy.
So I just found a list of all the most outrageous documents the government has kept a secret from us until recently, and here are some of the best. The United States blatantly stealing a satellite from Russia in 1967, Project MKUltra. The FBI's Bigfoot investigation, that was inconclusive. Confirmation of Operation Paperclip. The secret spies the US had during the Cold War in Alaska, who were just fishermen watching out for Russian paratroopers. The 1960s plan to build a moon base. And my favorite, 1983 trained cat soldiers. That was a multi-million-dollar project for spying on the Soviets. But after quite a few tests in one mission, they shut it down because the cats were really hard to train. Comment what you'd like to hear more about.
Cats are very hard to train. Why would they?
We were told that we fought World War II to stop the Nazis. But the second it ended, the U.S. government started paying them. And I'm not talking about a few bad apples. I'm talking about over 1,600 Nazis brought here, given jobs, and handed new lives by our own intelligence agencies.
Really?
It was called Operation Paperclip. It was run by the Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency in 1945. The goal? Recruit German scientists before the Soviet Union could get them. The problem? Most of the men they wanted weren't just scientists that lived under Hitler. They were full-blown Nazis, some even accused of war crimes. So what did the U.S. do? They literally erased their Nazi past from official records. Also, they could legally enter this country, change files, forge histories, stamp the papers clean, all to make sure that these men could work for the U.S. military and NASA. So let's talk specifics. Werner von Braun, this officer, built the B-2 rockets used to bomb London, which were made with the same slave labor from concentration camps. He became the face of NASA's Apollo program. Arthur Rudolph managed the Nazi rocket factory at Middlework, where thousands of forced laborers died. He later ran NASA's Saturn V rocket program. Hubertus Stronghold, called the father of space medicine in the U.S. But in Germany, he was accused of overseeing experiments on prisoners. Kurt Diebus, former SS member who became NASA's first launch director at Cape Canaveral. Walter Schreiber, Nazi medical officer linked to experiments on concentration camp prisoners, later worked for the U.S. Air Force. These weren't just alleged Nazis. These were documented SS members, war criminals, and Hitler loyalists, handed new careers by the U.S. government. And here's the part that should make your blood boil. At the exact same time America was flying Nazis across the ocean, Black veterans were being denied World War II GI benefits, redlined out of home loans, and kept out of universities. We told the world we stood against fascism. But when fascists had something that we wanted, like rockets, missiles, or Cold War leverage, we scrubbed their records and cut the checks. For decades, the U.S. hid just how many Nazis it actually recruited. It wasn't until the 1980s and 90s that journalists declassified those files and exposed the full scope of Operation Paperclip. And here's the thing, some of those men died in the U.S. as respected scientists with medals and honors, never facing a single trial for their Nazi crimes. The legacy? The moon landing, made possible by a Nazi. Cold War missile programs built by Nazis. And a precedent that in America's power calculus, morality is negotiable. So when you hear America's always stood for freedom, remember this. We didn't just forgive Nazis. We funded them. We protected them. We let them shape the very technology that we brag about today. Because in this country, we'll spend generations telling you who the enemy is, and then pay that enemy to work for us, only if it serves our interests.
That was crazy.
We are witnessing the largest cover-up in the history of the world regarding the Epstein files. We are learning now that the DOJ had removed approximately 9,500 Epstein files.
9,000?
This is according to a letter to a judge that was filed on Thursday. Now, I didn't notice files missing until yesterday. Many others didn't either. Julie K. Brown posted yesterday that the memo into investigating Epstein's co-conspirators had been pulled down. And she even talks about a PowerPoint slideshow about investigating co-conspirators that was created in the summer of 2025 that was presented to Kash Patel, meaning Kash Patel lied under oath to Congress, saying there was no credible evidence to investigate anyone else, that Epstein only trafficked women to himself. That's completely untrue. The FBI knew this. He was told. He lied under oath. And they continue to cover up. They say they're removing documents for extra security to create more redactions, saying that they've accidentally released information on the identity of victims that they have to go and create more redactions for. I don't buy it. I've seen many of these documents. I think that's absurd. They've over-redacted. They've redacted the names of the co-conspirators. That's what's been redacted, which they're not allowed to do. Even if it's embarrassing for them, they cannot do that according to the Epstein Transparency Act. So, guys, we are witnessing a massive, massive cover-up, and it's unfolding in front of our eyes. Let me know what you think about this in the comments. Like, share, spread the word, follow, subscribe, and I'll see you back here for the 411.
There's a case where a guy in 2006 disappeared in Olympic National Park. He was a former Army intelligence officer. He worked in Israel, he worked in Africa, he worked in a lot of different places, spoke 6 languages.
Damn.
And then he started to work in campaigns. And he worked for a woman who was campaigning to be a congresswoman in Washington State. She lost. She became the head of retirement services in the state of Washington. She brought him along as the assistant. His name is Gilbert Gilman. When I wrote the story up for my books, he was supposed to show up at this meeting for her on a Sunday. He stopped off at Olympic National Park, parked his car, was playing the music loud. A ranger come by, asked him to turn it down. He turned it down. He got out and he walked into the woods. He never came back. Huge search. He's never found.
What?
That's all I really knew. And I wrote it up like that. Canines couldn't follow his track. It disappeared, blah, blah, blah. Then we set up doing this thing for the movie, interviewing his relatives. And I interviewed his girlfriend. And his girlfriend said she saw him a month beforehand. And she said, a week before he disappeared, he was trying to call me like he wanted to tell me something, and I was busy and I couldn't talk to him. And I knew he wanted to tell me something, but then I put it up, so something was wrong. I never got to talk to him again.
Damn.
Lines up with the Finders cult.
What is the Finders? Remind me that.
Finders, this was a story that broke, I think it was in the 70s, in Florida, actually, I think in Tallahassee. There were some kids playing in a public park, but they looked malnourished. They were dirty. Clothes were threadbare. And some people passing by are looking at these kids, and they seem to be under the control of these two really well-dressed guys in a van, right? They're sort of watching them, sunglasses, the whole 9 yards. They look like bodyguards or something. And so the people, the civilians passing by, call the cops. So the cops show up and they arrest everybody. Like, what the hell is this? Who are these kids? Why do you have these kids? And they take the kids into a room and they start talking to them. Where'd you come from? Who are you guys? What's going on here? And the kids say, oh, we're going to a special school in Mexico. And yeah, we're part of this school thing that we're going to. And they're in the office, the police office, and they're looking at all the equipment in the police office, in the police department office, and they see telephones, and they didn't know what they were, right? So something really weird was taking place. So the cops hold on to them, and the two guys who are with them refuse to talk, right? They claim they were the two guards working, refuse to talk, and they say, we work for the government, here's a phone number you can call. So they call this number, and there's this group in Washington, D.C. at the time called Finders, and it was like a hippie kind of commune kind of thing, except that the guy who ran it was former OSS, right? And they were doing contract jobs for CIA. They're based in Washington, in a warehouse. So the place gets raided. Metropolitan Police in D.C. raid the place. And they come up with videos of kids and rituals and passports to foreign countries, visas for China and for Korea and everything else, a whole bunch of stuff, right? And they want to press charges. They want these people to go down. Like, what the hell is all this about, right? And as they're trying to do this, a guy comes in from D.C., they're in D.C., from the government, from CIA, allegedly, and says to them, you're not doing this anymore. You're dropping the case. It's over. Okay? We have jurisdiction now. See ya. And the whole thing was dropped. Nobody went to jail. Nobody was arrested. Nothing happened. The only reason we know about this is because one of the cops had enough of that and dumped it, right? Blew the lid on it. All the documents, whatever he could find that he still had access to, he had custody of, he went and told.
They dropped the whole thing?
What is a government cover-up that genuinely scares you? Project Sunshine was started in 1953, and it was created to study the effects of nuclear fallout on the human body. In particular, they were trying to research the radioactive isotope strontium-90, which I probably said that wrong. But this was thought to have the most serious ill effects on the human body, and scientists wanted to study it more. They decided that the best way to study the effects was to study on human bodies, like people who had passed on their bodies. But in particular, they wanted younger children because their bones were more porous and able to take more of this stuff in, from what I understand. But on January 18th of 1955, Dr. Willard Libby said that there was insufficient data because they were not able to get the bodies that they needed. In fact, he was even quoted saying that there was insufficient data and that he didn't know how to get his hands on these bodies. So he said, if anyone knows how to do a good job of body snatching, they will be serving their country.
Body snatching.
This would lead to over 1,500 samples to be gathered. Only 500 of them were used, but it would later come out that they had got these bodies in some seriously messed up ways. Many of these young bodies were taken from families in Europe and Australia and the United States without their parents' consent.
What the fuck?
One British mother came forward and said that she had lost her baby during childbirth, and doctors told her that she could not dress her own baby because it turns out that they had removed this baby's legs and shipped them over to the United States to be studied. So she was not able to dress her baby so that she wouldn't find out what they had done. By 1958, the study was brought to Belgium, and this is where they started studying the effects of nuclear fallout in the soil and how the soil would produce plants that cows would then eat and then we would consume, like the meat and the milk that came from this cattle. But regardless, these children were taken from these families without their consent, and this was a huge government cover-up for a long time. So what are your thoughts on this? Let me know down in the comments and follow for more creepy things.
Maybe this is not disclosure, this is a distraction. Him saying he's going to drop them files is all a distraction. While everyone is looking at the sky waiting for the aliens to come out, nobody is asking why 12 scientists who understood how to manipulate space-time are dead or missing. Nobody is asking why a woman in Huntsville who built a gravity modification device got hit by a car on her own campus and spent her final years unable to speak or remember anything. Nobody is asking why 25 defense scientists in Britain all died within 8 years and not one inquiry was ever opened. Nobody is asking why a man who built a car that ran on water used his last breath to say, "They poisoned me." And the case was closed the same day. They give you aliens because aliens are exciting. Aliens keep you looking up. But the real secret isn't in the sky. It's in the physics. It's in the energy. It's in the technology that would end fossil fuels overnight and make the most powerful industry on Earth completely worthless. That's what they've been killing people over since 1982. Listen, I can't talk about the whole thing on this app, but you can follow me on YouTube. I'm gonna drop the whole thing tonight. Let me throw in here, I'm of sound mind and body. I would never hurt myself. I love myself. I love my family. And if this video disappears, you know why.
Well, the whole Grand Canyon thing is bananas. Like, there's areas of the Grand Canyon you cannot explore.
You cannot go. You cannot fly over.
Right.
You can't fly under the rim. Yet when you go to those bad places, suddenly a white plane flies under the rim, black helicopters show up. I showed on my episode.
What?
I show the black helicopters showing up. They do show.
Like, they are protecting
something.
It's not as simple as this is a dangerous area, because you can go to any dangerous area.
You go just to the normal tourist area. It's like, be careful. People fall. 2 people a year fall.
Yeah, someone fell recently. Influencer. Of course, Grand Canyon, there's been these crazy stories of people finding these like these caverns with like Egyptian artwork and hieroglyphics, and these stories of artifacts that have been removed from there.
So the story is, it shows up, I believe, in like the Phoenix Gazette. It's 1903 or so. And the explorer is G.E. Kincaid, and he's going down, he's looking for gold deposits or whatever. This is just before Teddy Roosevelt made the Grand Canyon a preserve. He was a naturalist. So he finds these steps that are clearly man-made. He follows the steps up, and there's a cave, and he goes in there. He describes hieroglyphics that look Egyptian but are not quite. He finds a statue that he describes as like Buddha, not Egyptian, not human, but sort of like Buddha, and all these weapons, shields, gold, all sorts of stuff. He keeps going. He finds a deserted city in the caves, and all these tunnels and caverns go everywhere, and he's trying to map everything. He comes out, and he goes back to town, and he gathers together a group that we're going to go find this stuff again. And people are excited about it. And a couple of weeks go by, and everyone's gathered to go on the expedition. He never shows. The expedition goes nowhere, and that's really the last we've heard of it.
Well, the great part of the story is the fact that you actually can't go there. And the idea that there's an area where the military is protecting people from being foolish, that doesn't make any sense.
Nobody asks why.
Right.
Like, nobody asks why. It really bothers me about that story and all of these, whether it's disclosure or whatever. I don't hear anyone asking why. Well, they won't let us. Well, who's they?
Right.
Someone's in charge of stuff that's not the president.
Right.
Or Congress. So who is it?
Is it possible there's some sort of a government installation down there somewhere?
It's all going to be woo-woo conspiracy stuff, or it's real, or G.E. Kincaid found something and someone got to him.
But if G.E. Kincaid found something, why would they want to hide some ancient civilization discovery, particularly in the early 1900s? Like, why? For what reason?
I don't know why Graham Hancock is marginalized now.
But that wouldn't you think that there's like less of a grip on that stuff in the 1900s and
Yes.
early 1900s?
I would think so.
Yeah.
So my guess would be treasure and money. That would be my guess. Is it shows up in the paper, the government goes down there like, there's a lot of stuff down here. Let's grab it, send it to the Smithsonian, who keeps 99% of the stuff under wraps. They have a billion items that nobody can see, and then that's the end of it.
There's no official story as to why this area of the Grand Canyon is off limits.
For your safety.
The forbidden zone, they call it.
Yeah, that's all I can find.
That's fucking weird. That's fucking weird. That this story comes from the very area that's forbidden. That's fucking weird. Has anybody tried to hike in?
All the time.
Wear
Or
camo?
raft in.
Yeah, did they get busted?
And busted, yeah, and arrested.
Real.
You can find online, I wish I knew the names, of a team that went up there. That's who found the black helicopters, and I used them in the video, and I credit them, so you can find their videos. They're up there for an hour and a half, trying to find stuff. And what they found up in that forbidden zone is anchored into the ground a giant hook,
Right.
or like a loop.
Yeah.
Like,
I
what
saw
would
that.
you use that for? And that would be to rappel down. That's the only reason that would be there. There's no explanation for what is this. They also found artifacts from that era, from the early 1900s, artifacts that people were there. So it's possible that they rappelled that, like they might have been standing right above that entrance. And there are reverse angles of that rock face that look a little weird.
All right, guys, that was another TikTok compilation, man. That was about government cover-ups, man. That was a lot. That was a lot in there, especially talking about all of the medical stuff that they was trying and the bacteria and stuff. You made it this far, you a real one for real. Make sure you put that in the comments, man. Like I said, if you into this stuff, I got a TikTok playlist you can binge watch, but proceed with caution. But till next time, man, self-love and positivity. Fire Squad, I got you and you know it.